The champagne flutes balanced on Lena Walker's tray caught the light from the massive Christmas tree as she moved through the ballroom. Gold and red ornaments glowed above her. Laughter echoed off marble floors. Designer gowns brushed past her black dress as she navigated between tables where men in tailored suits conducted business disguised as celebration. She focused on each step because her vision kept narrowing at the edges, the room telescoping into a tunnel. 5 days. That was how long it had been since she'd slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. The exhaustion lived in her bones now, a weight she carried alongside the tray. Every paycheck disappeared into Jason's hands before she could even think about keeping enough for herself. The money kept him calm. The fear of what happened when he wasn't calm kept her moving. VIP section needs attention, Marcus said as she passed the service bar. He didn't look at her when he spoke. Nobody really looked at the waitstaff. Table 12. Lena nodded without responding. Table 12. The corner booth beneath the balcony where dangerous men sat surrounded by champagne buckets and low conversation. She knew who occupied that space tonight. Everyone who worked the winter gala knew Luca DeSantis when he walked through the door. Late 30s, dark hair slicked straight back from a face carved from stone and violence. Tonight he wore black, suit jacket fitted perfectly across broad shoulders, white dress shirt open at the collar. No tie. His posture radiated absolute control. Intricate tattoos covered his hands, black ink crawling up from his knuckles and disappearing beneath his cuffs, a map of authority written on skin. She approached the table slowly, tray held steady through sheer willpower. 6 men sat with him, all in dark suits, all speaking in tones that stopped the moment she got close. Luca's eyes, dark and burning with an intensity that missed nothing, flicked up to her face for half a second before returning to the man across from him. "Gentlemen," Lena said quietly, setting down the first glass. Her hand trembled slightly. She forced a steady, muscle memory from months of hiding everything. "Your champagne." No one acknowledged her. That was normal. In their world, servers were furniture, decorative and silent. She placed the second glass, then the third. As she reached for the fourth, a wave of dizziness hit her so hard the room tilted violently to the left. She gripped the edge of the table, tray clutched against her ribs like armor. "You all right?" one of the men asked, not unkindly.
"Fine," she lied.
The word came out thin as paper. She blinked hard, trying to clear the black spots dancing across her vision. The Christmas tree lights smeared into streaks of gold. The chandelier above fractured into 1,000 burning points. Luca looked up again. This time his eyes stayed on her, dark and assessing. Lena turned away quickly, heading back toward the service bar. She made it 4 steps before her knees buckled. The tray clattered to the marble floor. Crystal shattered. The sound cut through the string quartet, sharp and final as a gunshot.
She fell.
Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. Arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her up against a solid chest that smelled like expensive cologne and something darker. Gunpowder, maybe, or just the scent of a man accustomed to violence. She tried to speak, tried to apologize, but nothing came out. Her body felt impossibly heavy, like all the strength had bled out through the soles of her shoes. "I've got you," a voice said near her ear. Deep, calm, absolute. Luca DeSantis shifted his grip, one tattooed hand sliding beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing. Through the fog in her head, Lena felt him go still, felt the tension coil through his arms. She was too light. She knew that. Everyone who'd touched her lately noticed. Jason noticed when he grabbed her, when he shook her, when he shoved her against walls. The weight loss was just another thing she couldn't hide anymore. "Make room," Luca said. Not loudly. He didn't need to be loud. Every person between him and the main staircase moved immediately, the crowd parting like water around a shark. Lena's head lolled against his shoulder. She forced her eyes open, catching fragments of the scene through her failing vision. People staring. Marcus behind the bar with his phone out, probably calling an ambulance. The security guard near the entrance, looking uncertain, hand on his radio. No ambulance, Lucas said without looking at anyone. She's with me now. He carried her up the curved marble staircase to the second floor where management offices lined a quiet hallway. Private spaces where deals happened away from cameras and witnesses. His office sat at the end, door solid and dark as a coffin lid. He pushed it open with his shoulder, carrying her inside. The room was dimly lit, all leather furniture and dark wood paneling. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Chicago stretched out below in a grid of lights and snow. Rain had started, streaking down the glass in silver lines that blurred the world beyond. Luca moved to the long leather sofa against the wall and laid her down carefully, as if she might shatter. He pulled off his suit jacket and draped it over her like a blanket. The fabric was still warm from his body, heavy with his scent. Lena blinked up at him, trying to focus. He knelt beside the sofa, one tattooed hand resting on the armrest near her head, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the leather cushions. Your name, he said. Not a question. A command. Lena. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, I don't know what. When did you last eat? She hesitated. The truth felt dangerous. Everything felt dangerous. This morning. His jaw tightened, muscle jumping beneath the dark beard. Don't lie to me. Welcome back, my amazing family. I love connecting with viewers from all around the world. Drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching from? I'm so curious to see how far the story is reaching. If you're enjoying this so far, please hit that subscribe button and smash the like button. Your support means everything. Now, let's get back to the story. Something about the way he said it, quiet, certain, like he could see straight through her skin to the truth underneath, made honesty feel safer than deception. Thursday, Lena whispered. I had half a sandwich on Thursday. Today is Tuesday. I know. Luca's eyes darkened to almost black. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her left wrist. Her sleeve had bunched up when he'd carry her. Now he pushed it higher with deliberate care, exposing her forearm. Lena's breath stopped. The bruises were visible now. Purple-black fingerprints circling her wrist where Jason had grabbed her Sunday night. Yellow-green marks higher up where older injuries were fading into her skin like watercolor stains. And the split along her inner forearm from where she'd been shoved into the edge of their kitchen counter, the scab still dark and fresh. Lucas stared at her arm for a long moment. His thumb brushed over one of the fingerprint bruises, touch featherlight, like he was memorizing the exact shape of someone else's violence. When he looked up at her again, his expression was completely unreadable, a mask of controlled fury. Who did this to you? Not a question. A demand. Lena tried to pull her arm back, but his grip tightened just enough to keep her still. Not painful, just immovable. It's nothing, she whispered. It's fine. This is not fine. His voice dropped lower, each word deliberate. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. She couldn't. How could she explain Jason Cole to someone like Luca DeSantis? How could she make him understand the slow way violence crept into a relationship? The way fear became normal. The way leaving felt more dangerous than staying. I need to go back to work, she said instead, trying to sit up. They'll fire me if I... Luca placed one hand on her shoulder, gently pressing her back down. You're not going anywhere until I get answers. You can't just. I can. His eyes burned into hers. And I am. Lena's throat tightened. She looked away from him, focusing on the windows. The city lights blurred through the rain. She'd lived in Chicago for 3 years and never felt more trapped than she did right now, lying on a mafia boss's couch with her secrets bleeding out into the open air. I have a doctor coming, Lucas said, standing. He walked to his desk and picked up his phone, typing something quickly. His tattooed fingers moved with surprising grace. He'll check you over. I don't need a doctor. You collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition. He didn't look up from his phone. You need a doctor. I can't afford. I'm paying. Lena pushed herself up on her elbows despite the dizziness swimming through her skull. I don't want your money. That made him look at her. Really look at her, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. He set the phone down and crossed his arms, leaning back against the desk. What do you want? To disappear. To rewind 11 months and never meet Jason at that coffee shop. To stop being so tired all the time. To sleep without nightmares. To eat without calculating what violence the meal might cost her later. To go home, she said finally. Where's home? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because home was a studio apartment where Jason waited, where her keys didn't work anymore because he'd changed the locks last week to teach her a lesson about respect. Home was wherever Jason decided she was allowed to be. Lucas studied her for another long moment, then walked back to the couch. This time he sat on the coffee table directly in front of her, close enough that their knees almost touched. He leaned forward, elbows on his thighs, tattooed hands clasped together. I'm going to ask you something, he said quietly. And I need you to understand that I already know the answer. I just need to hear you say it. Lena's pulse quickened. Outside, she could hear the distant wail of sirens. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like 1,000 urgent fingers. Are you safe where you're living? The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Yes, Lena whispered. Luca's expression didn't change, didn't soften, didn't harden, just waited.
Try again, he said.
Her eyes burned. She looked down at her hands, at the bruises circling her wrists like ugly jewelry she couldn't take off. It's complicated. It's not. You don't know anything about my life. I know someone is hurting you, Lucas said, voice still quiet but edged with something sharp and lethal. I know you're starving yourself because someone else controls your money. I know you're covering bruises with long sleeves in a heated ballroom. I know you flinched when I reached for your wrist. I know you're more afraid of going home than you are of me. Lena felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking, just fracturing enough to let the truth leak out through the fissures. His name is Jason, she heard herself say. Jason Cole. We've been together 11 months. Luca waited, completely still, completely focused. He wasn't always like this. The words came faster now, like a dam breaking. In the beginning, he was just intense, protective. He said he loved me more than anyone had ever loved anyone. I thought it was romantic. She laughed, bitter and hollow. Stupid, right? Not stupid, Lucas said. Manipulated. The words settled over her like a weighted blanket. Manipulated. Not weak. Not broken. Manipulated. When did it start? Luca asked. 3 months in. Small things first, checking my phone, wanting to know where I was every minute. Then he started getting angry when I talked to other men. Then he started getting angry about everything. She pulled her sleeves down, covering the evidence with shaking hands. Last month, he started locking me in the apartment when he left. Said I couldn't be trusted. Luca's hands curled into fists. He didn't move otherwise, but Lena saw the violence coiled beneath his stillness. Saw it in the way his jaw clenched, in the way his knuckles went white, in the way his eyes burned with something that looked like murder, wearing a three-piece suit. "You tried to leave," he said. "Not a question." "Once." Her voice broke. "2 weeks ago. I packed a bag while he was at work and went to my friend Sarah's apartment across town." "What did he do, Lena?" She closed her eyes. "He found me in 4 hours."
"I don't know how."
He always knows." "He dragged me back to the apartment and," her breath caught. "I don't want to talk about what he did." "What's keeping you there now?" Luca's voice had gone very soft. Dangerously soft. Lena opened her eyes and met his gaze. This was it. The thing she'd never told anyone. The leverage that kept her chained. "He has my sister," she whispered. "Not literally. But he knows where she lives. Where she works." He showed me pictures, recent pictures, of her getting coffee, walking her dog, going into her building. He said if I ever leave again, if I ever tell anyone what he does to me, he'll hurt her. He'll make it look like an accident. And I believe him because... She stopped. Swallowed hard. Because what? Because he showed me how he'd do it. He made me watch videos online of people dying in accidents. Made me watch for hours while he described exactly how he'd make it happen to Emma. He made me understand that I'm not the only person who gets hurt if I leave. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain seemed to pause. Then Lucas stood. Slowly. Deliberately. Every movement controlled like a predator deciding whether to strike. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, voice like gravel and gunpowder. "Jason Cole is never going to touch you again. He's never going to touch your sister. And he's never going to see the inside of anything except a cell or a casket. Do you understand?" Lena stared up at him, this tattooed stranger with murder in his eyes and her life in his hands. "You can't just." "I already have." He pulled out his phone again, typed a quick message. "My men are moving on your apartment right now. They'll get your things. By the time Jason comes home tonight, you'll be somewhere he can't find you. Somewhere he can't hurt you. He'll go after Emma. Your sister will have protection by the end of the hour. Armed. Professional. He won't get within a city block of her." Lena's world tilted again, but this time it wasn't from hunger or exhaustion. This was the vertigo of falling in a completely different direction, not down, but forward into something she didn't have a name for yet. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Luca looked down at her, and for just a moment, the mask slipped. She saw something raw beneath the controlled violence. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Because I know what it's like to be powerless," he said quietly. "And because no one helped me when I needed it." He buttoned his cuffs, adjusting the fabric over his tattooed wrists. When he looked at her again, the mask was back in place. The boss. The enforcer. The man who made problems disappear. "Rest," he said. "The doctor will be here in 10 minutes. After that, we'll discuss what happens to Jason Cole." "What are you going to do to him?" Luca paused at the door, hand on the handle. He glanced back at her over his shoulder, and the smile that crossed his face was colder than the winter rain outside. "I'm going to make him pay." Lena's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she refilled crystal flutes from the champagne bottle, the golden liquid catching the light from 1,000 candles scattered across the ballroom. The winter gala was in full swing now, 300 guests in designer gowns and tailored suits pretending the world outside didn't exist. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours straight, weaving between tables, invisible except when someone needed their glass topped off. The Christmas tree at the center of the room towered 15 feet high, dripping with gold ornaments and white lights that made her vision swim every time she looked at it directly. She blinked hard, focusing on the tray in her hands. For more tables. Then she could take a break. Maybe sit down for 5 minutes in the service hallway where no one would see her legs give out. "You look like hell," Marcus muttered as she passed the bar. He was mixing martinis, not looking at her. You sick or something? I'm fine. Yeah, well, you're walking like you're gonna fall over. Don't make a scene, all right? These people tip well when the staff is invisible. Lena nodded and kept moving. Table 12 was next, the corner booth where Luca DeSantis sat surrounded by men who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime film. She'd served his table twice already tonight. Both times he'd glanced at her with those dark, assessing eyes and said nothing. Both times she'd felt like he could see straight through her black dress to the bruises underneath. She approached slowly, tray balanced on one palm. The men were deep in conversation, voices low and urgent. Something about a shipment, a delay at the docks. She didn't want to know more than that. Gentlemen, she said quietly, reaching for the first empty glass. Luca's eyes flicked to her face. This time they stayed there, narrowing slightly. Lena set down the first champagne flute. Her hand trembled. The second glass. The third. As she reached for the fourth, the room tilted violently sideways. She grabbed the edge of the table, knuckles white, tray pressed against her ribs. The voices around her went distant and hollow, like she was underwater. The chandelier overhead fractured into a dozen burning suns. She couldn't breathe right, couldn't get enough air past the tightness in her chest. Miss? One of the men was looking at her now, concern creasing his forehead. You all right? Yes, The words dissolved. Black spots bloomed across her vision, like ink spreading through water. She turned away from the table, heading back toward the bar on instinct. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else.
Too heavy.
Too far away. The marble floor stretched endlessly in front of her. 3 steps.
4.
Her knees buckled. The tray clattered to the floor. Crystal exploded across marble, champagne spreading in a golden pool that reflected the Christmas lights overhead. The sound cut through the string quartet like a gunshot. Lena fell. Strong arms caught her mid-collapse, wrapping around her waist and hauling her up against a solid chest. The world spun violently, then steadied as she was pulled tight against someone who smelled like expensive cologne and danger. I've got you. The voice was low, commanding, absolute. Luca DeSantis shifted his grip, one tattooed hand sliding beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. He lifted her like she weighed nothing at all. Through the fog in her head, Lena felt him go completely still. Felt the tension coil through his arms as he registered how light she was, how the bones of her spine pressed against his forearm through the thin fabric of her dress. Make room, he said. Not loud. Didn't need to be. The crowd parted instantly. Lena tried to speak, tried to apologize for the scene she was making, but her voice wouldn't work. Her body had given up entirely, surrendering to the exhaustion she'd been fighting for days. No ambulance, Luca said as someone pulled out a phone. She's with me. He carried her through the ballroom, past the glowing Christmas tree, past the shocked faces and whispered speculation. She felt his heartbeat against her cheek, steady and strong. Felt the controlled power in the way he moved, like he could carry her to the end of the world without breaking stride. Her vision was fading now, darkness closing in from the edges. The last thing she heard before consciousness slipped away was his voice, rough and certain, speaking to someone she couldn't see. Find out who did this to her. Lena woke to the scent of leather and wood smoke. Her eyes opened slowly, vision blurring before focusing on an unfamiliar ceiling, dark beams crossing white plaster, recessed lighting casting soft shadows. She was lying on something soft. A couch. Expensive fabric beneath her cheek. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her head swam, stomach lurching.
Easy.
The voice came from her left, deep and calm. You've been out for about 10 minutes. Luca DeSantis sat in a high-backed chair pulled close to the couch, elbows resting on his knees, tattooed hands clasped together. He'd removed his suit jacket. His white dress shirt was rolled up to the elbows now, exposing more of the intricate black ink that covered his forearms, patterns she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Lena's breath caught. She was in his office, alone, with a man whose reputation made grown men nervous. Where? Her voice came out as a rasp. My private study. Second floor. You collapsed in the middle of the ballroom. He said it matter-of-factly, like it was a normal occurrence. When was the last time you ate something? The question caught her off guard. This morning. His eyes, dark and intense, locked onto hers. Try again. Something about the way he said it made lying feel impossible. Dangerous, even. Not because she thought he'd hurt her, but because those eyes saw everything. Saw through every carefully constructed defense she'd built over the past 11 months. Thursday, she whispered. Half a sandwich on Thursday. Luca's jaw tightened, muscle jumping beneath his dark beard. He stood slowly, walking to the windows that overlooked the city. Rain streaked down the glass, Chicago spread out below in blurred lights and shadow. When he turned back to her, his expression was unreadable. You're malnourished, exhausted, running on fumes. He moved toward her again, each step deliberate. And you're covered in bruises. You think I can't see through that dress. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know what you don't. The single word cut through her excuse like a blade. He knelt beside the couch, bringing himself to her eye level. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. Don't insult either of us by pretending I'm blind. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she couldn't move, his tattooed fingers gently circled her left wrist. The touch was featherlight, but she still flinched. Luca's eyes narrowed. Without breaking eye contact, he slowly pushed up the sleeve of her dress. The bruises looked worse under the office lights. Purple-black fingerprints circled her wrist where Jason had grabbed her 3 nights ago, dragging her back from the door when she'd tried to leave for work early. Above that, yellow-green marks from the week before, fading into her skin like watercolor stains. And higher still, near the crook of her elbow, the dark line where she'd been shoved into the kitchen counter hard enough to split the skin. Lucas stared at her exposed arm for a long moment. His thumb traced over one of the fingerprint bruises with infinite care, like he was memorizing the exact pattern of someone else's violence. When he looked up at her again, his eyes burned with something that made her breath catch. Controlled violence. Fury wrapped in ice. Who did this to you? Not a question. A command. Each word precise and lethal. Lena tried to pull her arm back, but his grip tightened just enough to keep her still. Not painful, just immovable, like trying to move against gravity itself. It's nothing, she said, hating how weak her voice sounded. I'm fine. This. He touched another bruise, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jump. Is not fine. This is someone putting their hands on you hard enough to leave marks for days. This is someone who needs to be taught what happens when they touch what's mine. The words hung in the air between them. What's mine? Lena's mind stuttered over the phrase, unable to process what it meant, why this dangerous stranger would claim her as anything. I don't belong to you, she whispered.
No.
Luca's expression didn't change. But you sure as hell don't belong to whoever did this anymore. So I'll ask you one more time, and I want the truth. Who put these marks on you? Lena's eyes burned. She looked away from him, focusing on the rain streaming down the windows. The city looked so far away from up here. So small. She'd lived in Chicago for 3 years and never felt further from escape than she did right now. "You don't understand," she said finally. "You can't just. I can do anything I want." He said it without arrogance. "Just fact. I run half this city. I own judges, cops, politicians. I make problems disappear before breakfast. So, whatever you think I can't do, you're wrong. He'll hurt my sister." The confession fell out before she could stop it. Lena's breath caught, realizing what she'd just revealed. Not just the identity of her abuser, but the leverage. The chain that kept her locked in place. Luca went very still. "Explain." "His name is Jason Cole. We've been together 11 months. The words came faster now, like a dam breaking. "He wasn't always like this. In the beginning, he was just intense. Said he loved me more than anyone could love anyone. I thought it was romantic." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "I was so stupid." "Not stupid," Luca said quietly. "Manipulated. There's a difference." The words settled over her like a weighted blanket. Manipulated. Not weak. Not broken. Not stupid. Manipulated. "When did it start?" he asked. 3 months in. Small things first, checking my phone, wanting to know where I was every minute. Then he started getting angry when I talked to other men. Then angry about everything. She pulled her sleeve down with her free hand, trying to cover the evidence. "Last month, he started locking me in the apartment when he left for work. Said I couldn't be trusted." Luca's hands curled into fists against his thighs. He didn't move otherwise, but Lena saw the violence coiled beneath his stillness. Saw it in the way his knuckles went white, in the way his jaw clenched, in the way his eyes burned with murder wearing a tailored suit. "And your sister?" he asked, voice dangerously soft.
Emma.
"She lives across town. Jason's been following her. Taking pictures. He showed them to me last week, her getting coffee, walking her dog, going into her building." Lena's voice broke. "He said if I ever leave, if I tell anyone what he does to me, he'll hurt her. He'll make it look like an accident. And I believe him." Luca stood abruptly, turning away from her. He walked to his desk, braced his hands against the dark wood, head bowed. His shoulders rose and fell with controlled breaths. When he finally looked back at her, his expression was carved from stone and fury. "Jason Cole made a mistake tonight," he said quietly. "He let you out of his sight long enough for me to find you. And now he's going to learn what happens when someone touches something under my protection. You can't. I already have." He pulled out his phone, typed a quick message. "My men are at your apartment right now. They'll get your things. By the time Jason comes home tonight, you'll be somewhere he can't find you." He looked up, eyes burning into hers. "And your sister will have armed protection by morning. He won't get within a city block of her." Lena stared at him, this tattooed stranger with murder in his eyes and her life in his hands. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Luca crossed the room to stand in front of her again. He reached down, gently tilting her chin up with one tattooed finger until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. "Because I know what it's like to be powerless," he said quietly. "And no one helped me when I needed it." His thumb brushed over her jaw, touch impossibly gentle for a man built of violence. "But I can help you. And I'm going to make sure Jason Cole regrets every single mark he left on your skin." The car that pulled up to the private entrance of the hotel was nothing like Lena expected. Sleek black, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and danger in equal measure. 2 men in dark suits flanked the doors, earpieces visible, eyes constantly scanning the street. "This is necessary," Lucas said, his hand at the small of her back as he guided her toward the car. His suit jacket was draped over her shoulders again, still warm from his body. Jason doesn't know where you are yet, but he will soon. We need to move before he starts looking. Lena climbed into the back seat, sinking into leather that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Lucas slid in beside her, and the door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like a vault ceiling. The two men got into the front, neither speaking. The city slid past outside the tinted windows as they drove north, away from downtown, away from the small studio apartment where Jason was probably pacing right now, checking his watch, getting angrier with every minute she was late. Her phone had been buzzing in her pocket for the last 20 minutes. She turned it off without looking at the messages. She already knew what they said. Where are you? Answer me. You're making me worried. If you don't answer in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. This is your last chance. The progression was always the same. Concern, then accusation, then threat. She'd learned to read the pattern like weather forecasts, predicting the storm before it arrived. Stop thinking about him, Lucas said quietly. He was watching her, she realized. Had been watching her the entire drive. Whatever you're imagining he's doing right now, it doesn't matter anymore. You don't know that. I do. His voice was certain. Absolute. Because my men are already at your apartment. They'll make sure he understands you're no longer his concern. Lena's stomach twisted. What does that mean? It means they'll have a conversation with him. A persuasive one. Luca's expression didn't change. And if he's smart, he'll accept that you're gone and move on with his life. And if he's not smart, Luca's eyes darkened. Then the conversation gets more persuasive. The car turned off the main road onto a private drive lined with old-growth trees. Wrought iron gates swung open as they approached, closing immediately behind them with a clang that sounded final. Security cameras tracked their progress up the long driveway. When the house came into view, Lena's breath caught. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. 3 stories of pale stone and dark windows, lit from below by landscape lighting that made it look like something out of a movie. Marble steps led up to massive double doors. Gardens stretched out on either side, even in winter managing to look elegant and maintained. You live here? The question came out barely above a whisper. I do. Luca opened the car door, extending his hand to help her out. And for now, so do you. The interior was even more overwhelming. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, dark wood banister polished to a mirror shine. Original artwork hung on walls that probably cost more to paint than Lena had earned in her entire life. Everything was pristine, elegant, untouchable. She felt like she was going to break something just by breathing. Maria, Luca called out. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a simple black dress and crisp white apron. Her expression was warm but professional. This is Lena Walker. She'll be staying in the East Wing guest suite. Make sure she has everything she needs. Of course, Mr. DeSantis. Maria's eyes softened as she looked at Lena, taking in the too-thin frame, the exhaustion etched into her face, the way she was clutching Luca's jacket around her shoulders like armor. Come with me, dear. Let's get you settled. Lena followed her up the grand staircase, acutely aware of Luca watching from below until they turned the corner. The East Wing hallway was quieter, lined with closed doors and more artwork she was afraid to look at too closely. Maria stopped at the third door on the left and pushed it open. The guest suite was bigger than Lena's entire apartment had been. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silk the color of champagne. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens, heavy curtains pulled back to reveal the grounds lit up like something from a fairy tale. A sitting area with a plush couch and chairs. A door that opened to reveal a bathroom with marble counters and a tub big enough to swim in. I can't stay here, Lena said, voice breaking. This is too much. I don't belong in a place like this. Maria turned to her, expression gentle but firm. Mr. DeSantis doesn't bring people here lightly. If he says you belong here, then you do. She walked to a closet and opened it, revealing it was already stocked with clothes. These should fit. He had them brought in while we were driving. If anything doesn't work, just let me know and I'll have it replaced. Lena stared at the closet full of clothes she'd never chosen, in a room she'd never asked for, in a life that didn't feel real. 6 hours ago, she'd been serving champagne to people who didn't see her. Now she was standing in a mansion wearing a Mafia Boss's jacket, surrounded by luxury that felt like a cage dressed up in silk and marble. There's security throughout the property, Maria continued, moving to the windows. Guards patrol the perimeter 24 hours. The gates are monitored. No one gets in or out without Mr. DeSantis knowing about it. She looked back at Lena. You're safe here. Whatever you're running from, it can't reach you inside these walls.
Safe.
The word felt foreign. Lena had forgotten what it meant to feel safe, to breathe without calculating the cost, to exist without fear pressing against her ribs like a hand around her throat. I'll bring up some food, Maria said, heading toward the door. You haven't eaten properly in days, from what I understand. Soup and bread to start. Something gentle on your stomach. I'm not hungry. Maria paused at the door, giving her a look that was pure maternal authority. I don't care if you're hungry. You're eating. Doctor's orders. Well, Mr. DeSantis's orders, which around here are basically the same thing. Her expression softened. You've been taking care of everyone else for too long, dear. Let someone take care of you for once. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Lena stood in the middle of the enormous room, still clutching Luca's jacket, and felt something inside her chest crack wider. She walked to the windows, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The garden stretched out below, pristine and perfect. Security lights illuminated the perimeter walls. She could see the shadows of guards moving between the trees. A fortress. That's what this place was. Beautiful and elegant and utterly impenetrable. She'd spent 11 months trapped in a studio apartment, locked in by fear and threats and a man who'd convinced her she had nowhere to run. And now she was locked in again, this time by marble floors and security cameras and a dangerous man who'd decided she was his to protect. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She turned it back on without thinking, muscle memory from months of needing to be available every second Jason wanted to reach her. She pulled it out with shaking hands. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. She opened the messages, scrolling through the familiar progression.
Worry.
Anger.
Threats.
And then at the bottom, sent just 3 minutes ago. I know where you are. I know who took you. If you think that monster can protect you from me, you're even stupider than I thought. Come home now, and I'll forgive you. Make me come get you, and you'll regret it. So, will your sister? Lena's hands shook so hard, she nearly dropped the phone. She stared at the message, at the threat buried in false concern, at the man who'd systematically destroyed her sense of safety, now promising to destroy what little she'd found. A knock at the door made her jump. It's me. Luca's voice came through the heavy wood. Can I come in? She didn't trust her voice to work, so she just opened the door. Luca stood in the hallway, still in his white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, tattoos visible in the dim light. His eyes went immediately to her face, then to the phone clutched in her white-knuckled grip. He contacted you. Not a question. Lena nodded, handing him the phone without speaking. Luca read the message, jaw tightening with each word. When he looked up, his eyes burned with that same controlled violence she'd seen in his office. He's lying, Lucas said quietly. He doesn't know where you are. He's guessing. Trying to scare you into coming back. He handed the phone back. Block his number. All of them. Every way he has to reach you. He said he knows who you are. He probably does by now. My men made sure of that when they had their conversation with him. A cold smile crossed Luca's face. Let him know who took you. Let him know exactly who he'd have to go through to get you back. It'll make him think twice before he tries anything stupid. Lena looked down at the phone, at the message that made her hands shake and her chest tighten. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she blocked Jason's number. Blocked his email. Blocked every single way he had to reach her. The silence that followed felt like freedom and terror in equal measure. Good, Luca said. He reached out, gently taking the phone from her hands and setting it on the dresser by the door. Now forget he exists. You're here. You're safe. And tomorrow we'll start making sure he can never touch you again. Lena couldn't sleep. She tried for 3 hours, lying in the massive bed that felt too soft, too big, too much like drowning in luxury she didn't deserve. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jason's face, heard his voice, felt his hands closing around her wrist with enough force to leave marks that would last for days. At 2 a.m, she gave up and wrapped herself in the silk robe Maria had left folded on the bathroom counter. The house was quiet as she slipped out of her room, bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. She didn't know where she was going, just knew she couldn't stay in that beautiful cage of a bedroom for another second. The hallways were dimly lit by sconces that cast warm shadows on the walls. She found the stairs and descended slowly, one hand trailing along the polished banister. At the bottom she paused, listening. Somewhere in the house, she could hear the faint sound of music. Classical. Violin and piano weaving together in something melancholy and beautiful. She followed the sound through the main foyer, past rooms she hadn't seen yet, until she reached a partially open door spilling golden light into the dark hallway. She peered inside. Lucas sat in a leather armchair near floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a tumbler of what looked like whiskey in one hand, his other hand resting on the arm of the chair. He'd changed into dark slacks and a simple black t-shirt that revealed more of his tattoos than she'd seen before. The ink didn't stop at his wrists. It covered his entire forearms, disappearing under the short sleeves. His eyes were closed, head tilted back, listening to the music flowing from speakers she couldn't see. He looked different like this. Less like the dangerous man who'd carried her out of the ballroom, more like someone who carried his own weight of exhaustion and old wounds. You can come in, he said without opening his eyes. I know you're there. Lena hesitated, then pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The room was a library, walls lined with books that looked old and expensive and well-read. A fireplace crackled softly in the corner, casting dancing shadows across the Persian rug. Couldn't sleep? Luca asked, finally opening his eyes to look at her.
No.
She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt in just the robe. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. He gestured to the chair across from him.
Sit.
If you want. She sat, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. Old habits. Jason had taught her to always know where the exits were, to always be ready to move when his mood shifted. Luca watched her for a long moment, then reached for a second glass on the side table and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into it. He held it out to her. It'll help you sleep. I don't drink. Neither did I once. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Then I learned that sometimes the memories are too loud and you need something to quiet them down. Lena took the glass. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a clean burn, nothing like the way fear burned in her chest. She took another sip, then another, feeling the warmth spread through her body. "What are you listening to?" she asked. "Tchaikovsky. Piano Concerto No. 1. Luca swirled the whiskey in his glass, watching the liquid catch the firelight. "My mother used to play it. Before." "Before what?"
His jaw tightened.
For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer, that she'd crossed some invisible line. Then he set his glass down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Before my father killed her." The words hung in the air between them, brutal and honest. Lena's breath caught. Luca rolled up his left sleeve completely, revealing the full extent of the tattoos covering his forearm. In the firelight, she could see they weren't random. They were deliberate, each mark telling a story written in black ink. "I got my first tattoo when I was 16, he said, tracing a finger over a pattern of thorns wrapped around his wrist. "The day after I killed my father." Lena's eyes widened. She should have been afraid, should have stood up and walked out of the room. But something in his voice, the quiet pain beneath the brutal facts, kept her frozen in place. "He was a violent man," Luca continued, voice steady but laced with old anger. "A drunk. He'd beat my mother for years.
Beat me when I tried to stop him."
I learned early that the world was divided into people who had power and people who didn't. People who inflicted pain and people who endured it." He looked up at her, eyes dark and burning. "I swore I'd never be powerless again." "What happened?" Lena whispered. "I came home one night and found her on the kitchen floor. He'd gone too far this time. She was still breathing, barely, and he was sitting at the table drinking like nothing had happened." Luca's hands curled into fists. "I picked up the same bottle he'd used to hit her, and I beat him with it until he stopped moving. Then I called an ambulance for her and the police for him." "Did she survive?" "For 3 days. Long enough to tell me it wasn't my fault. Long enough to make me promise I'd never become him." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "I got this tattoo the day after her funeral. A reminder of what happens when you're too weak to protect the people you love." He moved his hand to another tattoo higher up his forearm, a broken chain with wings spreading from the severed links. "This one I got when I was 22. The day I took over my first territory. I'd spent 6 years clawing my way up through the organization, learning how to be dangerous, how to make people afraid. This was my reminder that I'd broken free from being a victim." Lena watched as he traced each tattoo, listening to the stories written in ink and pain. A skull with a crown, the night he became a boss. A rose with thorns dripping blood, for his mother. A series of Roman numerals, dates he refused to explain, but that clearly meant something dark. "And this one," he said, showing her his right hand where ornate script wrapped around his knuckles. She couldn't read it in Italian, but he translated, "Nessuno mi farà mai più del male." "No one will ever hurt me again." "But they're not just about you, are they?" Lena said quietly. "They're about everyone you couldn't save." Luca's eyes met hers, and she saw the recognition there. The understanding that she'd seen past the armor to the wound underneath. "I couldn't save my mother," he said. "Couldn't protect her from my father until it was too late. That failure lives in me like a scar that never heals." He leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "So when I see someone else being hurt, someone else trapped by a man who uses fear and violence to control them, I can't walk away. I won't. Is that why you helped me?" "Yes." No hesitation. No apology. "Because I see her in you. See that same look in your eyes. The exhaustion of constantly calculating survival. The fear that's become so normal you've forgotten what it feels like to breathe without it." Lena's throat tightened. She looked down at the whiskey in her glass, watching the amber liquid shimmer in the firelight. "I thought I was weak for staying with him. For not leaving sooner." You're not weak. Luca's voice was firm. You're a survivor. There's a difference. Weak people break under pressure. Survivors adapt, endure, find ways to keep breathing even when the world is trying to suffocate them. He paused. You survived 11 months with a man who is systematically destroying you. That takes a kind of strength most people never have to find. I don't feel strong. No one who's been through trauma does. That's part of what they take from you, the ability to recognize your own resilience. He stood, walking to the fireplace. His back was to her now, shoulders tight. But I see it. I see it in the way you kept working even when you were starving. In the way you protected your sister even at your own expense. In the way you're sitting here, having this conversation instead of falling apart. Lena set down her glass with shaking hands. What if I do fall apart? Luca turned to face her, and the expression on his face was something she hadn't expected. Not pity, not sympathy, understanding. Then you fall apart here, where it's safe to break. He moved back to his chair, sitting down across from her again. And when you're ready to put yourself back together, I'll help you find the pieces. She felt tears burning behind her eyes, the kind she'd been holding back for months because crying in front of Jason was weakness, and weakness was punished. But here, in this firelit room with a man who'd turned his own trauma into armor, she felt the dam beginning to crack. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm scared he'll find me. Scared he'll hurt Emma. Scared that even with all your security and all your promises, he'll still find a way to make me pay for leaving. He won't. Luca's voice was absolute. Because I'm going to make sure the only person paying for anything is him. And the price. His eyes burned with that controlled violence she'd come to recognize. Will be everything he has. The classical music swelled in the background, violin crying out something beautiful and broken. Lena looked at this man covered in ink and scars, this dangerous stranger who'd pulled her out of hell and promised to keep her safe, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. The first fragile thread of hope that she might actually survive this. That Jason Cole might not be the end of her story after all. Thank you, she said quietly, for telling me about your mother, for sharing that with me. Luca inclined his head slightly. We all have scars, Lena. Mine are just more visible than most. He stood, offering her his hand.
Come on.
I'll walk you back to your room.
You need to rest.
She took his hand, feeling the rough texture of his tattooed skin against her palm, and let him pull her to her feet. As they walked through the quiet house together, she realized that for the first time in 11 months, she wasn't afraid of the man beside her. And that, she thought, might be the most dangerous thing of all. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee drifting up from somewhere below. For a moment, one blessed, disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Forgot about Jason. Forgot about the bruises still fading on her wrists and the fear that lived in her chest like a second heartbeat. Then reality crashed back in, and she remembered. The estate.
Luca.
The fortress of marble and security cameras that was supposed to keep her safe. She showered in the massive bathroom, using products that probably cost more than her weekly paycheck used to. The hot water felt like luxury against her skin, washing away the exhaustion that had settled into her bones over the past few months. She dressed in clothes from the closet Maria had stocked, dark jeans that actually fit, a soft gray sweater that didn't hang off her too-thin frame like everything she'd owned with Jason. When she made her way downstairs, she found Maria in the kitchen, a space that looked like it belonged in a cooking magazine. All stainless steel and marble countertops, windows overlooking the gardens where morning light made everything look impossibly green despite the winter chill. Good morning, dear, Maria said, looking up from the stove where she was making what smelled like fresh pancakes. Mr. DeSantis had to step out for a meeting, but he left instructions that you're to eat a proper breakfast.
Sit.
Lena sat at the kitchen island, watching Maria move around the kitchen with practiced efficiency. A plate appeared in front of her. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, toast. More food than she'd seen in one place in months. I can't eat all this, Lena said. Eat what you can. Maria poured her a cup of coffee, adding cream without asking. Somehow she knew exactly how Lena took it. Your body needs time to adjust, but you need to start somewhere. Lena picked up her fork and started eating slowly, each bite feeling strange after days of near starvation. The food was good, better than good, but her stomach had shrunk, and after half the pancakes and a few bites of eggs, she felt uncomfortably full. Maria didn't comment, just cleared the plate without judgment and refilled her coffee. Mr. DeSantis should be back within the hour. He wanted to speak with you when he returned. Before Lena could respond, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Then Luca's voice, low and sharp, giving orders to someone she couldn't see. Bring him to my office. And make sure he understands that if he tries anything at all, he won't make it out of this house alive. Lena's blood went cold. She knew that tone, knew the barely controlled violence underneath the calm words. Maria's expression tightened. Stay here, dear. But Lena was already moving, setting down her coffee and following the sound of voices to the front of the house. She reached the foyer just in time to see two of Luca's men dragging someone through the door, a man with dark hair and a suit that looked expensive but rumpled, blood trickling from a split lip, eyes wild with a combination of fear and rage. Jason. Her entire body locked up. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at the man who'd controlled every aspect of her life for 11 months, now being manhandled like he was nothing. Jason's eyes found hers across the foyer, and something ugly twisted his features. Lena, baby, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them to let me go. The sound of his voice, the same voice that had whispered he loved her, had screamed at her, had threatened her sister, made her stomach lurch. Luca appeared from a side hallway, moving with that predatory grace she'd come to recognize. His eyes found Lena first, something protective and fierce flashing across his face, before he turned to Jason with an expression that could freeze blood. Get him out of her sight, Luca said quietly.
Now.
Lena. Jason struggled against the men holding him, voice rising to a shout. Don't do this. You know you belong with me. You know what happens when you disobey. One of Luca's men hit him. Not hard enough to knock him out, just hard enough to shut him up. Jason's head snapped to the side, and when he looked back up, his eyes were filled with a hatred so pure it made Lena take an involuntary step backward. Luca was at her side instantly, one hand at the small of her back, solid and steady. Go back to the kitchen, he said softly. You don't need to see this. How did he find me? The words came out as a whisper. He didn't. We found him. Luca's jaw tightened. He's been sitting outside your sister's apartment building for the past 6 hours, watching, waiting for her to leave, so he could follow her, use her to get to you. His eyes burned with that controlled violence. My men picked him up before he could get close. Lena felt the room tilt slightly.
Emma.
Jason had been stalking Emma, just like he'd promised he would. Is she okay? She's fine. She has 3 of my best men watching her building. Jason never got within 50 feet. Luca's hand moved to her shoulder, squeezing gently. But he crossed a line. And now he's going to learn what that costs. Jason laughed, the sound manic and bitter. Blood from his split lip stained his teeth red. You think you can keep her? You think she's yours now? She'll always be mine. She knows it. She knows what I'll do if she... Shut him up, Lucas said, voice like ice. One of the men shoved a cloth into Jason's mouth, muffling whatever threats he'd been about to make. Luca turned to Lena, his expression softening slightly. I need you to go upstairs. Maria will stay with you. What I'm about to do, you don't need to witness it. What are you going to do? Lena asked, even though part of her didn't want to know. I'm going to make sure he understands that you are under my protection now. That touching you, threatening you, or even thinking about you is off limits. Luca's thumb brushed over her cheek, touch gentle despite the violence simmering beneath his skin. And I'm going to make sure he never forgets it. You're going to kill him. Not a question. A statement of fact.
No.
Luca's smile was cold. Death would be too quick. Too easy. I'm going to make him wish I'd killed him instead. Jason's eyes widened behind the gag, the bravado draining from his face as he realized exactly how much trouble he was in. He tried to speak, tried to plead through the cloth, but the sounds that came out were muffled and pathetic. Lena stared at him, this man who'd made her feel small and worthless, who'd convinced her she had nowhere to run, who'd systematically destroyed her sense of self until she barely recognized her own reflection. And she felt nothing. No sympathy. No fear. Just a cold, detached satisfaction that he was finally the one who was powerless. Lena. Luca's voice pulled her attention back to him. Go upstairs. Trust me. She met his eyes, saw the promise there, the absolute certainty that Jason would never hurt her again. And slowly she nodded. Okay. Maria appeared at her side, taking her arm gently. Come on, dear. Let's go back to your room. As Maria led her toward the stairs, Lena heard Lucas speak to his men, voice dropping to something dark and dangerous. Take him to the basement. I'll be down in 5 minutes. And someone get me the pliers and a blowtorch. Jason's muffled screams started before they'd even reached the second floor. Lena sat on the edge of her bed while Maria made tea neither of them would drink, hands shaking in her lap, listening to the distant sounds of violence filtering up through the floors. She should have felt horrified. Should have been appalled by what was happening in the basement of this beautiful mansion. But all she felt was relief. Relief that someone was finally making Jason pay. Relief that she wasn't alone anymore. Relief that the man who'd promised to protect her was keeping that promise in the most brutal way possible. An hour later, Luca appeared in her doorway. His white shirt was gone, replaced by a black t-shirt. There was blood on his hands, not his own. His knuckles were split and raw, but his eyes were calm, the violence that had been simmering beneath his surface, now satisfied. It's done, he said quietly. Is he
Alive?
Barely. Luca walked to the bathroom, turning on the sink to wash his hands. He won't be walking right for a few months. Won't be using his hands for anything more complicated than feeding himself. And he'll never forget what happens when he threatens someone under my protection. He dried his hands on a towel, then came to sit beside her on the bed, close enough that she could smell the soap he'd used, the faint copper scent of blood underneath. He had your sister's schedule, Luca said. Written down in detail. Where she works, where she gets coffee, what time she walks her dog. He was planning to grab her today, use her to force you back. Lena's breath caught. But he didn't. He didn't because I made sure he couldn't. And now he won't. Ever. Luca's tattooed hand found hers, fingers lacing through her own. I made him sign a confession. Every time he hit you, every threat he made, every way he controlled you. All of it documented, in his handwriting, with his signature. If he ever comes near you or your sister again, that confession goes to the police, and he spends the rest of his life in prison. He paused. Assuming he lives long enough to make it to trial. You'd kill him if he tried again. Without hesitation. No apology. No regret. Just brutal honesty. Lena looked down at their joined hands, her pale skin against his tattooed darkness, her fragility against his strength. "Thank you," she whispered. Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "You don't thank me for this. You don't thank someone for doing what should have been done months ago."
His voice softened.
"You're safe now, Lena. He can't touch you. And if he's stupid enough to try, he won't survive the attempt." She believed him. Believed it in a way she'd never believed Jason's promises, never believed her own ability to escape. Luca DeSantis was a dangerous man, a violent man, a man who'd just spent an hour teaching her ex-boyfriend what real fear felt like. And for the first time in almost a year, Lena felt truly, completely safe. 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm of healing and routine. Lena ate regular meals under Maria's watchful eye, her body slowly remembering what it felt like to not be constantly starving. The bruises on her wrists faded from purple to yellow to nothing. She slept without nightmares most nights, though she still woke sometimes to check that her door wasn't locked from the outside. Emma came to visit twice, protected by Luca's men who escorted her through the gates and waited discreetly in the foyer, while the sisters sat in the sunroom drinking tea. Emma cried the first time, holding Lena so tight it hurt, apologizing for not seeing what was happening, for not doing more. Lena had held her back just as tightly and told her there was nothing to forgive. But the days were long, beautiful and safe and utterly mind-numbingly long. Lena found herself wandering the estate like a ghost, reading books from Luca's library that she didn't really absorb, staring out windows at gardens she was afraid to walk through alone. She was grateful, God, she was so grateful to be safe. But gratitude didn't fill the hours, didn't give her purpose beyond simply existing. On a Thursday morning, she found herself outside Luca's home office, drawn by the sound of his voice through the partially open door. He was on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian that she couldn't follow, but the tone was pure business.
Sharp.
Decisive. The voice of a man who ran an empire. She should have walked away. Should have gone back to her room or the library or anywhere that wasn't hovering outside his private workspace like some kind of lost child. Instead, she knocked. The Italian stopped mid-sentence. "Come in." Lena pushed the door open. Luca sat behind a massive desk made of dark wood, 3 computer monitors arranged in front of him, papers spread across every available surface. He'd rolled up his sleeves, tattoos on full display, and there was a tired tension around his eyes that told her he'd been working for hours. He held up one finger, "Wait," and finished his phone conversation in clipped Italian before setting the phone down. "Everything all right?" "I need something to do," Lena said before she could lose her nerve. "I'm going insane just existing here. I need to be useful." Luca leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark, assessing eyes. "You're recovering. You don't need to be useful." "Yes, I do." She stepped further into the office, crossing her arms. "I appreciate everything you've done for me. I do. But I can't just sit around in luxury doing nothing while you." She gestured at the chaos of his desk. "Work yourself to death running whatever this is." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "Whatever this is?" "Your empire. Your business. Whatever you call it when you're being legitimate versus when you're being..." She trailed off, not quite sure how to finish that sentence diplomatically. "Criminal?" He said it without any shame. "The word you're looking for is criminal, Lena." "I was going to say complicated." He actually laughed at that, the sound surprising them both. "Complicated. That's one way to put it." He stood, walking around the desk to lean against it, arms crossed. "What exactly did you do before you met Jason?" "I was in college. Business administration. I was going to get my MBA, work in corporate management." She looked down at her hands. That was the plan, anyway. Before I dropped out to work full-time, because Jason said we needed the money. Before everything became about keeping him happy instead of building a future. Luca was quiet for a moment, watching her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Can you use spreadsheets? Databases?
Yes.
I was good at it, actually. Analysis, organization, seeing patterns in data. She met his eyes. Why? He turned back to his desk, gathering a stack of files. Because the legitimate side of my business is a mess. I own restaurants, nightclubs, real estate holdings, a security company. All of it legal, all of it profitable, and all of it drowning in paperwork I don't have time to manage properly. He held out the files to her. My accountant handles the finances, but the day-to-day operations, the scheduling, the vendor contracts, the employee issues, it's all chaos. I need someone I can trust to bring order to it. Someone smart enough to see where we're hemorrhaging money and organized enough to fix it. Lena took the files, feeling their weight in her hands. Real work. Real responsibility. You trust me with this? You're living in my house, eating at my table, protected by my men. Luca's expression was serious. If I didn't trust you, you wouldn't be here. The question is whether you trust yourself enough to do the work. She opened the top file, scanning the contents. Inventory reports for one of his restaurants, vendor invoices, employee schedules that made no logical sense. Her fingers itched to reorganize it, to create systems and spreadsheets and order out of the chaos. When do I start? She asked. Now, if you want. He gestured to a smaller desk in the corner of his office, one she hadn't noticed before. That's yours. Computer, phone, whatever supplies you need. Maria can bring lunch up here. We'll work together. Lena walked to the desk, setting down the files like they were something precious. What if I mess it up? Then you fix it. Luca returned to his own chair, already pulling up something on his computer. You're not with Jason anymore, Lena. Here, mistakes don't get you punished. They get you educated. There's a difference. She sat down at her new desk, running her hand over the smooth wood surface. The computer was already on, logged into a profile with her name. He'd prepared this. Had been waiting for her to ask. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see the disaster that is the Highland Park restaurant's inventory system. Lena smiled, actually smiled, and opened the first file. Within minutes, she was absorbed, her mind finally engaging with something beyond fear and survival. She created a new spreadsheet, started categorizing expenses, flagged irregularities that screamed of either incompetence or theft. An hour passed. Then, 2. She barely noticed. You're good at this, Lucas said at one point, making her look up from the screen. He was watching her with something that looked like approval. Really good. I told you I was. She turned back to her work, but she could feel the warmth of his praise settling in her chest like sunlight. By lunchtime, she'd reorganized 3 months of inventory data and identified a vendor who was charging twice the market rate for produce. By dinner, she'd created a new scheduling system for the restaurant staff that would save thousands in overtime costs. By the time Maria came up to tell them both to eat something, Lena had forgotten to be afraid for the first time in 11 months. She'd forgotten to check over her shoulder. Forgotten to calculate the cost of every word before speaking. Forgotten that her value was supposed to be measured in how well she could disappear. Instead, she'd remembered what it felt like to be competent, capable, useful in a way that had nothing to do with serving drinks or making herself small. You found a voice, Lucas said as they sat in his office eating the dinner Maria had brought up. He'd cleared a space on his desk for the plates, and they ate in comfortable silence broken only by the occasional comment about work. What? When you walked in here this morning, you asked for something. Demanded it, really. He gestured with his fork. You didn't apologize. Didn't make yourself small. You just said what you needed and expected me to listen. Lena thought about that, about the way she'd knocked on his door without permission, the way she'd told him she needed to be useful instead of asking if, maybe possibly, she could help if it wasn't too much trouble. I didn't realize, she said. That's the point. It should feel natural, not like something you have to calculate. Lucas set down his fork, expression serious. Jason spent 11 months teaching you that your voice didn't matter, that your needs were secondary to his, that asking for things was dangerous.
He paused.
I'm going to spend however long it takes teaching you the opposite. Lena's throat tightened. She looked down at her plate, at the food she'd eaten without thinking about whether she'd earned it, at the desk covered in work that mattered, at the life she was slowly, cautiously beginning to build. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to be safe. How to trust it. You do it one day at a time. Luca's voice was gentle but firm. You wake up. You work. You eat. You sleep without checking that the door is unlocked. And eventually, it stops feeling like pretending and starts feeling real. She looked up at him, this dangerous man with murder in his past and protection in his present, and felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, but something deeper than gratitude. Something that felt like partnership. Like being seen not as a victim to be saved, but as a person with value beyond her trauma. Okay, she said. One day at a time. Lucas smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. One day at a time. That night, Lena fell asleep at her desk, laptop still open to a spreadsheet, notes scattered around her like evidence of a mind finally allowed to work again. Luca found her there around midnight, head pillowed on her arms, breathing deep and even. He draped his suit jacket over her shoulders, the same jacket he'd given her the night he'd carried her out of the ballroom, and went back to his own work, content to let her sleep somewhere other than the too-big bed in the too-perfect room. Content to let her find her own way back to herself, one spreadsheet at a time. The nightmare came without warning, tearing Lena from sleep like hands dragging her under dark water. She was back in the apartment, Jason's fingers wrapped around her throat, his voice in her ear telling her she was nothing, that she belonged to him, that leaving would mean Emma died screaming. The cigarette burned against her skin, and she could smell her own flesh cooking, could hear herself begging him to stop, promising to be good, promising anything if he'd just let her breathe. She woke gasping, throat raw from screaming, sheets twisted around her legs like restraints. The room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows, and for a terrifying moment, she didn't know where she was. Panic clawed at her chest. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the phantom sensation of hands around her neck. The door burst open, Luca filling the doorway with a gun in his hand, eyes scanning the room for threats that weren't there. He was in sleep pants and nothing else, tattoos stark against his skin in the moonlight, hair disheveled from sleep. Lena. He lowered the gun immediately, setting it on the dresser as he crossed to the bed. Talk to me. What happened? She tried to speak, but no words came out. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't control them. She pressed them against her chest, feeling her heart hammering like it was trying to escape her ribcage. Luca sat on the edge of the bed, moving slowly like she was a wild animal that might bolt. You're safe. You're in my house. Jason isn't here. He can't hurt you. His voice was calm, steady, an anchor in the storm. Breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. He demonstrated, exaggerating the movements so she could follow. Lena tried to match him, dragging air into lungs that felt too small. 1 breath.
2.
3. Slowly, The panic began to recede, leaving her exhausted and shaking. "I'm sorry," she managed finally, voice cracking. "I didn't mean to wake you. I'm fine. You can go back to." "Don't." Luca's hand found hers in the darkness, tattooed fingers lacing through her pale ones. "Don't apologize for having nightmares about the man who tortured you for 11 months. And don't lie and say you're fine when you're clearly not." Lena looked down at their joined hands, at the way his rough skin felt warm and solid against hers. It felt so real. I could feel his hands on me, could smell the cigarette. I was back there, and I couldn't get out. That's what trauma does. It doesn't care that you're safe now. It just replays the worst moments on an endless loop until you learn to make it stop. Luca's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "How often do you have them? The nightmares?" "Most nights. Sometimes I can go back to sleep after. Sometimes I just stay awake until morning." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you've already done so much. Because I didn't want to be more trouble than I already am." She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "Because I should be getting better by now, not still waking up screaming." Lucas stood, and for a moment she thought he was leaving, thought she'd finally pushed too far, been too broken for even him to handle. Instead, he walked to the other side of the bed and sat down with his back against the headboard, long legs stretched out in front of him. "What are you doing?" Lena asked. "Staying." He looked at her, expression serious in the moonlight. "Move over." She hesitated, then shifted to make room. Luca adjusted the pillows behind him, settling in like he had no intention of leaving. He held out his arm in invitation. "Come here." Lena stared at him, at the tattooed arm that had held weapons and delivered violence, and now offered comfort. "You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to." His voice softened. "You're shaking, Lena. Let me help." She moved hesitantly, curling against his side. His arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close until her head rested against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, feel the warmth of his skin through the thin fabric of her sleep shirt. "Better?" he asked quietly. "Yes." It came out as a whisper. She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of him. Soap and something darker, something uniquely Luca. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a long moment, moonlight painting silver across the room. Lena felt her breathing slowly synchronize with his, felt the trembling in her muscles begin to ease. His hand moved in slow, soothing circles on her shoulder, touch careful and controlled. "Tell me something," Luca said finally. "Something from before Jason. Something he didn't touch." Lena thought about that, searching through memories that felt like they belonged to someone else. "I wanted to open my own consulting firm someday. Small business management, helping people who couldn't afford the big corporate consultants. I had the whole thing planned out, the name, the services, even the office space I wanted to rent." "What was the name?" "Walker Solutions." She smiled despite herself. "Not very creative, but it felt right. Like I was solving problems, making things work better." "You're doing that now," Lucas said. "With my businesses. You've already saved me more money in a month than I've paid some consultants in a year." "That's different."
Why?
"Because I'm a criminal?" There was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. "Because this is temporary. Because eventually I'll need to leave, build my own life instead of hiding in yours." Luca's hand stilled on her shoulder. "Is that what you think you're doing? Hiding?" "Aren't I?"
No.
His voice was firm. "You're recovering. There's a difference. And when you're ready to build that life, to start that company, I'll help you. Funding, connections, clients, whatever you need." Lena lifted her head to look at him, searching his face in the moonlight. "Why would you do that?" Something shifted in his expression, the careful control slipping just enough for her to see what lay beneath. His rugged face softened, the hard edges of the enforcer giving way to something more vulnerable. Because somewhere between carrying you out of that ballroom and watching you reorganize my entire restaurant empire, you stopped being just someone I was protecting. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing over her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. You became someone I care about. Someone whose future matters to me beyond just keeping you safe. Lena's breath caught. Luca. I'm not asking you for anything, he continued quietly. I know you're not ready for that. Maybe you never will be, and that's fine. But I need you to know that what I feel for you, it's not pity. It's not just protection. He paused, searching for words. It's everything. Her heart hammered in her chest, but this time it wasn't from fear. She reached up, covering his hand with her own where it rested against her cheek. I don't know what I feel yet. Jason broke something in me, and I'm still trying to figure out what's left. I know. Luca's thumb traced over her lips, touch featherlight. And I'll wait, however long it takes. What if I'm too broken? What if I can't? You're not broken. You're healing. And healing takes time. His eyes burned into hers with an intensity that stole her breath. I've waited my whole life for someone to look at me the way you do, like I'm more than just the violence, more than just the monster everyone else sees. I can wait a little longer for you to see yourself the way I see you. How do you see me? The question came out barely above a whisper. Strong, brilliant, resilient, beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with how you look and everything to do with who you are. His voice roughened with emotion. You survived hell, Lena. You didn't just endure it. You survived it with your compassion intact, with your intelligence sharp, with your capacity for trust still possible despite every reason to never trust anyone again. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. I'm scared. Of me. Of this. Of feeling safe with you. Of wanting to stay here instead of building my own life. Of becoming dependent on you the way I was dependent on Jason. That will never happen, Luca said fiercely. Because I don't want you dependent. I want you whole. I want you strong enough to choose to be here, not trapped into staying. His hand tightened slightly on her face. And if the day comes when you choose to leave, when you need your own space to become who you're meant to be, I'll let you go. I'll hate it, but I'll let you go. She searched his face, looking for the lie, for the trap, for the moment when the gentleness would shatter and reveal the control underneath. But all she saw was truth. Raw, painful, honest truth. Stay tonight, she asked softly. Just until I fall asleep? I'll stay as long as you need me to. Luca shifted, settling them both more comfortably against the pillows. Close your eyes. I've got you. Lena tucked herself against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. His arms came around her, strong and protective and utterly safe. For the first time since the nightmare started, she felt like she might actually sleep through the rest of the night. Luca, she murmured, already drifting. Yeah, thank you. For seeing me. His arms tightened around her, and she felt his lips brush against her hair. Always, Lena. Always. She fell asleep wrapped in safety and warmth, and for once, the nightmares stayed away. And when Maria came to wake her for breakfast the next morning, she found them still tangled together. Luca's tattooed arms wrapped around Lena's sleeping form, his rugged face peaceful in sleep, the monster and the woman he'd chosen to protect finding something neither of them had expected. Each other. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by regular mail to the estate's gates. Security brought it to Luca immediately, recognizing the thread in the way it was addressed. To Lena Walker, from someone who still owns her. Lena was in the office reviewing vendor contracts when Luca appeared in the doorway, his expression carved from stone and fury. He held the envelope between two fingers like it was contaminated. "He sent something," Luca said without preamble. "I can burn it without you seeing it, or you can read it, and we deal with it together. Your choice." Lena's stomach dropped. She knew that handwriting on the envelope, had seen it on grocery lists and passive-aggressive notes left on the bathroom mirror, and finally on the confession Luca had forced him to sign. "Let me see it." Luca crossed the room and handed it over, then leaned against her desk, arms crossed, jaw tight, ready to catch her if she fell. Lena opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single printed photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph made her blood run cold. It was her, taken through the window of the estate library 3 nights ago. She'd been curled in the reading chair by the fireplace, lost in a book, completely unaware she was being watched. The angle was wrong for the security cameras to have caught whoever took it. Jason or someone working for him had been on the property. The note was worse. "You think you're safe behind his walls? You think he can protect you forever? I've been watching. I know your routine. I know when you're alone. I know where Emma lives, where she works, what time she walks her dog. One phone call, and the pictures go public. You remember the pictures, don't you, baby? The ones you begged me not to take. They're already uploaded, already scheduled to send to everyone you've ever known. Your sister, your old professors, Luca's business partners, everyone. Unless you come home, you have 48 hours. Come back where you belong, or I destroy both of your lives. This is your last chance. I still love you. I can forgive you, but you have to choose me." Lena read it twice, hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. When she looked up, Luca was watching her with eyes that burned with controlled violence. "What does it say?" His voice was dangerously calm. She handed him the note without speaking, watched his jaw clench tighter with each word he read. When he finished, he set it down on the desk with careful precision, like he was restraining himself from tearing it apart. "The pictures he's threatening you with," Luca said quietly. "Tell me." Lena wrapped her arms around herself. "From 6 months ago. He said he wanted to try something new, make videos to keep the spark alive. I didn't want to, but he wore me down. Convinced me it was normal, that couples did this, that it meant I trusted him." Her voice cracked. "When I tried to leave the first time, he showed me the files. Said if I left he'd send them everywhere. Said I'd lose everything. Do you know where he keeps them? On his laptop. Password protected. He used to make me watch while he uploaded them to some cloud service, just to remind me they existed." Luca pulled out his phone, typed a message. "My tech guy will have access to his accounts within the hour. We'll delete everything, cloud, hard drive, any backups. All of it gone like it never existed. He'll still have copies. Not for long." Luca's expression was carved from ice and fury. "He made a mistake coming onto my property. Made a bigger mistake threatening you again." He looked down at her, and something in his eyes made her shiver. "I'm going to end this.
Today. Permanently."
But I need to know, do you want to be there when I do it?" Lena's heart hammered. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make him understand that you were never his to own. That threatening you, stalking you, trying to manipulate you, it ends now. And then I'm going to make sure he never has the opportunity to hurt anyone ever again." His tattooed hand cupped her face gently. "You don't have to watch. You can stay here, let me handle it."
"No."
The word came out stronger than she expected. "I want to be there. I want him to see that I'm not afraid of him anymore." Luca studied her face, searching for doubt. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Lena stood, squaring her shoulders. "He spent 11 months making me feel small and powerless and broken. I want him to see what's left. I want him to see that he didn't destroy me. Something fierce and proud flashed across Luca's face. Then let's go make him regret every choice he's ever made. 2 hours later, Lena sat in the back of Luca's car as they pulled up to a warehouse on the industrial edge of the city. Jason's car was already there, parked in the loading bay exactly where Luca's message had told him to come. The message had been simple. You want her back? Come get her. Luca's men flanked the entrance, 6 of them in dark suits with weapons visible. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an execution of justice dressed up in concrete and shadow. Last chance to stay in the car, Luca said, hand on the door handle. I'm not staying in the car. He nodded once, then got out and came around to open her door. She took his offered hand, using his strength to steady herself as they walked into the warehouse. Jason was already inside, pacing in the center of the empty space. He looked worse than when Luca's men had brought him to the estate, thinner, desperate, with the manic energy of a man who'd lost everything and was making one final, stupid play to get it back. When he saw Lena, his face twisted into something ugly. Relief and rage and possession all tangled together.
Lena.
Baby. I knew you'd come back. I knew you'd. I'm not here to come back, Lena said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. I'm here to watch you lose. Jason's expression darkened. He reached into his jacket, and Luca's men all drew their weapons, the sound of safeties clicking off echoing through the warehouse. Jason froze, slowly pulling out his phone instead of a weapon. Don't be stupid, Jason said, voice shaking with barely controlled fury. One tap, and those pictures go out. Your sister sees them. His business partners see them. Everyone sees exactly what kind of whore you really. Luca moved faster than should have been possible, crossing the distance and grabbing Jason's wrist, twisting until the phone clattered to the concrete floor. One of Luca's men immediately picked it up, already working to disable it. You're not sending anything, Luca said quietly, still holding Jason's wrist at an angle that made him whimper. Because my people already deleted every file you had. Cloud storage, laptop, external drives, that phone you keep in your glove compartment, all of it.
Gone.
The pictures don't exist anymore. Jason's face went white. That's impossible. You can't. I can do anything I want. That's the difference between you and me. Luca shoved him backward, and Jason stumbled, barely catching himself. You're a pathetic little man who gets off on controlling women half your size. I'm the monster who makes men like you disappear. Lena, please. Jason turned to her, and for a moment she saw the man she'd fallen for 11 months ago. The one who'd been charming and intense and promised to love her forever. Please, baby. I'm sorry. I know I went too far. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. We can start over. I'll get help. I'll change. Just give me another chance.
No.
The word came out clear and final. Lena stepped forward, standing beside Luca, presenting a united front. You didn't go too far. You went exactly as far as you planned to from the beginning. You chose to isolate me, chose to hurt me, chose to threaten my sister. Those weren't mistakes, that was who you are. I love you. You don't know what love is. Lena's voice hardened. Love doesn't leave bruises. Love doesn't starve. Love doesn't terrorize. You're a predator, Jason. And I'm done being your prey. Jason's expression transformed from desperate pleading to pure hatred. You think you're better than me now? You think he's any different? He jabbed a finger at Luca. He's a criminal. A murderer. You're just trading one monster for another, you stupid. Luca hit him. One precise strike that sent Jason crashing to the concrete, blood streaming from his broken nose. He stood over him, radiating controlled violence. I am a monster, Lucas said quietly. But I'm her monster. And the difference between you and me is that I would die before I hurt her. You. He crouched down, grabbing Jason's hair and forcing him to look up. You enjoyed it. Luca pulled out a document from his jacket. The confession Jason had signed, plus new additions. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a restraining order agreement. You're going to liquidate your assets and put half in an account for Lena as restitution. And you're going to leave Chicago. Tonight. If you're still in this city by sunrise, my men will find you. And next time, I won't stop at Broken Bones. And if I don't sign, then I hand this confession to the police along with medical records documenting every injury you gave her. You'll spend the next decade in prison. Luca's smile was cold. And I have people inside who owe me favors. They'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Child abusers and women beaters don't do well in general population. Jason looked between Luca and Lena, seeing no mercy in either face. Slowly, hands shaking, he took the pen and signed. Luca stood, nodding to his men. Get him out of my sight. Make sure he's on a plane by midnight. I don't care where it goes. As they dragged Jason toward the exit, he screamed back at Lena. This isn't over. You'll never be free of me. I'll always be in your head. The warehouse door slammed shut, cutting off his voice. Lena stood in the sudden silence, breathing hard, adrenaline crashing through her system. She'd done it. She'd faced him, told him the truth, watched him lose. And she was still standing. Luca's arm came around her shoulders, solid and steady. You okay?
Yeah.
She leaned into his strength, letting herself be held. Yeah, I think I am. He was right about one thing, Luca said quietly. He'll always be in your head. The trauma doesn't disappear just because he does. I know. Lena looked up at him. But now when I remember, I'll also remember this. Remember standing up to him. Remember having someone beside me who didn't make me face it alone. Luca's expression softened, and he pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You're free now, Lena. Really free. What you do with that freedom, that's up to you. She closed her eyes, breathing in assent, feeling his heartbeat steady against her. I choose this. I choose you. Not because I'm dependent or trapped or afraid, but because I want to. You're sure? I'm sure. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I'm choosing you, Luca. If you'll have me. His answer was in the way he kissed her, fierce and gentle and full of promises he'd kill to keep. 6 weeks after Jason disappeared from her life, Lena was deep in the financial records of Luca's security company when she noticed something wrong. A series of payments to a vendor she didn't recognize, amounts that didn't match any contract she'd seen, routed through accounts that seemed designed to obscure their origin. She cross-referenced the payments against employee records, vendor lists, operational expenses. Nothing matched, but the pattern was clear. Someone inside Luca's organization was funneling money out, and they'd been doing it for months. Luca, she called across the office. He looked up from his own work, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look less like a crime boss and more like the businessman he was pretending to be. I found something. Come look at this. He came around to her desk, leaning over her shoulder to study the spreadsheet. She could feel the heat of him, smell his cologne, and even after weeks of living together, working together, falling asleep beside him most nights, the proximity still made her pulse quicken. These payments, she said, highlighting the column. They're going to a company called Meridian Solutions. But Meridian Solutions doesn't exist in any of our vendor databases. And look at the amounts, they're always just under the threshold that would trigger an audit flag. Luca's expression darkened. How much total? Over the past 6 months? Almost 2 million. He pulled out his phone, typed a message. I need to make some calls. Can you track where the money's going after it leaves our accounts? I can try. Lena was already opening new windows, pulling up banking interfaces she'd learned to navigate over the past weeks. Give me an hour. Luca disappeared into his private office, voice rising and falling in rapid Italian through the closed door. Lena worked, following the money through a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts, each layer designed to hide the ultimate destination. When she finally found it, her blood ran cold. The money was going to the Castellano family, Luca's biggest rivals in Chicago, the ones who'd been trying to muscle in on his territory for years. Someone in Luca's organization was feeding them information and money, setting him up for something big. She was printing the evidence when she heard the footsteps in the hallway.
Too many of them.
Too quiet.
Wrong.
The office door opened and 3 men she'd never seen before walked in, guns drawn. They wore suits like Luca's men, moved with the same professional confidence, but their eyes were cold and calculating in a way that made her freeze. Lena Walker, the one in front, said, voice smooth and pleasant like he was greeting an old friend. You're coming with us. I don't think so. She kept her voice steady, mind racing. The panic button under her desk was 3 inches to her left. If she could reach it without them noticing. Don't. The man aimed his gun directly at her head. Hands on the desk where I can see them. She complied slowly, placing her palms flat on the wood surface. Luca's in the next room. His men are all over this estate. You'll never make it out. Luca DeSantis is currently dealing with a very urgent situation at his downtown restaurant. A fire. Very suspicious. His men are occupied. The man smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. As for the estate security, they're about to discover their camera feeds have been compromised for the last 20 minutes. By the time anyone realizes you're gone, we'll be long gone. Lena's mind worked frantically. The evidence she'd just printed was still sitting in the printer. If they saw it, they'd know she'd discovered their operation. What do you want with me? Your leverage. Luca DeSantis cares about you, which makes you valuable. He gestured with the gun. Now stand up. Slowly. Try anything and I'll shoot you in the leg and carry you out. Your choice. Lena stood, keeping her movements deliberate. As she came around the desk, she stumbled slightly, catching herself on the edge. In the same motion, her hand swept the printed pages into the trash bin under the desk. One of the other men grabbed her arm, yanking her forward. They moved toward the door, and Lena's mind raced through everything she'd learned in the past 2 months. Every conversation she'd overheard, every detail about how Luca's operation worked, every piece of information she'd absorbed while reorganizing his empire. The security cameras were compromised, but the backup system wasn't on the same network. She discovered that while reviewing the security company's infrastructure, if she could get to a panic button, any panic button, it would trigger the backup system and alert Luca's men. There was one in the hallway, 10 feet from the office door. Wait, she said, making her voice shake, making herself seem smaller, more frightened than she was. Please. I need my inhaler. I have asthma. If I panic, I can't breathe. The man holding her arm hesitated. Where is it? My purse. In the office. She gestured back toward her desk with her free hand. Please. I can't breathe. She made her breathing quick and shallow, adding a wheeze that wasn't entirely fake. The fear was real enough, even if the asthma wasn't. Fine. Make it quick. He shoved her back toward the office. Lena went to her desk, fumbling through her purse with shaking hands. She pulled out her phone, pretending to search for the non-existent inhaler. Her thumb found the emergency app Luca had installed weeks ago. One tap would send an alert directly to him and his security team. She tapped it, dropped the phone back in her purse. I can't find it, she said, voice breaking. It must be in my room. No time. The man grabbed her again, rougher this time. You'll be fine. Move. They dragged her into the hallway. Lena let herself stumble again, falling against the wall directly next to the panic button. Her elbow hit it hard enough to bruise. Alarms erupted throughout the estate. Red lights flashing. The sound of doors automatically locking. The backup system engaging exactly like it was designed to. The man holding her cursed, yanking her toward the stairs. They made it halfway down before Luca's men appeared, weapons drawn, blocking every exit. "Let her go." Marco, Luca's head of security, said quietly. "You're surrounded. There's no way out." The man holding Lena pressed his gun against her temple. "Back off or she dies." "If you kill her, you die in the next 3 seconds," Marco said. "And it won't be quick."
Luca's on his way.
"You know what he does to people who touch what's his." Lena felt the gun pressing harder against her head, felt the man's hand shaking slightly. He was scared.
Good.
Scared people made mistakes. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," Lena said, keeping her voice steady despite the weapon against her skull. "Your boss, whoever sent you, is stealing from Luca. I have evidence, bank records, transaction histories, everything. I know about the Castellano family. I know about the shell companies. I know everything." The man holding her went very still. "And in about 30 seconds, Luca is going to walk through that door, and he's going to ask me if I want him to kill you quickly or slowly. And, honestly," she met Marco's eyes across the foyer, "I haven't decided yet." The sound of a car screeching to a halt outside. The front door slamming open. Luca appeared like a force of nature, gun in hand, eyes wild with fury and fear. He took in the scene, Lena with a gun to her head, his men surrounding the intruders, the alarm still blaring. His eyes met hers. She saw the moment he registered that she was alive, unhurt, and then she saw the moment the fear transformed into something much more dangerous.
Let
her go. Each word was carved from ice and violence. "We were just leaving," the man holding Lena said, voice shaking now. "Just letting us walk out and nobody." "You came into my home," Luca said quietly, walking forward slowly. "You put your hands on her, put a gun to her head. And you think I'm going to let you walk out? The Castellanos will go to war. Let them." Luca's voice was absolutely calm, absolutely lethal. "I've been waiting for an excuse to wipe them off the map. You just gave it to me." Lena felt the gun pressing against her temple waver. The man was calculating his odds, realizing he had none. "I have information," Lena said quickly, before the situation could deteriorate into bloodshed. "About who inside your organization is working with them. About how they've been stealing from you. About their entire operation." She looked at Luca. "Let them go, and I'll give you everything you need to destroy the Castellanos completely." Luca's jaw clenched. She could see him warring with himself, the need for immediate violence battling against strategic thinking. "You have 10 seconds, he said finally, gun still trained on the man holding Lena. "Let her go, walk out of here, and tell your boss that Luca DeSantis knows everything. Tell him I'm coming for him. Tell him to run." The pressure of the gun disappeared from Lena's head. The man shoved her forward and ran for the door, his companions right behind him. Luca's men let them pass, weapons tracking their movement until they disappeared into the night. The moment they were gone, Luca was there, hands on her face, eyes searching for injury. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" "I'm fine. I'm okay." Lena grabbed his wrists, holding on like an anchor. "I got the evidence. All of it. And I triggered the alarm. I knew you'd come." "Of course I came." His voice was rough with emotion. "You think there's anything in this world that would stop me from getting to you?" She pulled him down and kissed him, hard and desperate and alive. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, she smiled against his lips. "I saved myself this time," she said. "But it's nice knowing you'd burn the city down if I needed you to." Luca's laugh was shaky with relief. "Always, Lena. I'd burn the whole world down for you." "I know." She pulled back, squaring her shoulders. "Now, let me show you what I found. We have a war to win." His expression was fierce with pride and something deeper. "Show me everything." Together, they walked back to the office, partners in every sense of the word, ready to dismantle the people who dared to threaten what they'd built together. 6 months later, Lena stood on the balcony of Luca's penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, watching the sun set over the city in streaks of gold and crimson. The summer air was warm against her skin, carrying the scent of water and possibility. She wore a black dress, elegant, expensive, chosen because she liked it, not because someone told her to. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, and when she caught her reflection in the glass doors behind her, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked strong, healthy,
Alive.
the Castellano family had collapsed 3 weeks after the attempted kidnapping. Lena's evidence had been devastating: bank records, communications, a complete map of their operation that she'd pieced together from months of financial data. Luca had moved with surgical precision, dismantling their empire piece by piece until nothing remained but cautionary tales whispered in back rooms. And through it all, Lena had been beside him. Not as decoration or trophy or protected asset, but as partner. Her business mind had proven invaluable, her ability to see patterns in chaos giving Luca advantages his rivals never saw coming. Walker Solutions had officially opened 4 months ago. A small office in the financial district, tastefully decorated, with a client list that was growing faster than she'd dared to hope. Luca had been her first investor, but she'd paid him back within 2 months. Not because he'd asked, he'd laughed when she insisted, but because she needed to know she could stand on her own.
Even if she chose not to.
The balcony door opened behind her, and she felt more than heard Luca join her at the railing. His presence was familiar now, comforting in a way that still sometimes surprised her. He'd taught her that safety didn't have to mean control, that protection could exist without possession. "You're thinking too loud," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist and pulling her against his side. "I can hear it from inside." "Just remembering," Lena said, leaning into his warmth. "The woman who collapsed in that ballroom feels like someone else entirely. Someone I used to be. She was you. Just a version of you that hadn't remembered her own strength yet." Luca pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm glad I got to witness the remembering." Lena turned to face him, studying the man who'd become her foundation and her future. His dark hair was slightly disheveled from the wind, tattooed hands resting gently on her waist. The violence was still there, would always be there, but it coexisted with a tenderness he showed only to her. "I have something for you," Luca said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I was going to wait until dinner, but I've never been good at patience when it comes to you." He pulled out a small velvet box, and Lena's breath caught. "Luca, it's not what you think." "Well, it is, but it isn't." He opened the box, revealing not a ring but a key. Ornate, old-fashioned, made of silver that caught the dying sunlight. "This is the master key to the estate. It opens every door, every safe, every locked room. It's the key I carry. The only one like it." Lena stared at the key, understanding the weight of what he was offering. "You're giving me access to everything. I'm giving you proof that I trust you with everything." Luca took the key from the box and placed it in her palm, closing her fingers around it. 6 months ago, I carried you into my world to protect you. I made decisions for you because you weren't strong enough yet to make them yourself. But that woman is gone. The woman standing in front of me now is my equal in every way that matters. Luca, let me finish." His hands came up to cup her face, thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. "I love you, Lena Walker. I love your strength, your intelligence, your compassion despite everything you survived. I love the way you reorganized my entire empire and made it better. I love the way you stand beside me instead of behind me. I love that you chose me, not because you needed saving, but because you wanted me. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes, the good kind that came from happiness instead of pain. I do love you. I didn't think I could feel this after Jason. Didn't think I'd ever trust anyone enough to let them close. But you, her voice caught. You gave me time, space, room to heal and become whole again. You never asked me to be anything other than myself, because you were always enough exactly as you were. Luca's smile was soft, genuine, the one he saved only for moments when the armor could come down. I want you to have this key not because you need it to feel safe here, but because I want you to know this is your home as much as mine. Your sanctuary. Your empire too if you want it. Lena looked down at the key in her hand, feeling its weight like a promise made solid. What if someday I want to leave? Not because of you, but because I need to prove I can stand completely alone. Then you leave. No hesitation. And when you're done proving whatever you need to prove, I'll be here, waiting. Because that's what love is. It's the choice to stay even when you could go. And I want you to choose me every day. Not because you're trapped, but because you want to be here. She closed her hand around the key, then reached up and pulled him down into a kiss. It started gentle but deepened into something that spoke of promises and future and forever. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, she rested her forehead against his. I choose you, she whispered. Today and every day after. Not because I need you, but because I want you. Because you see me, really see me, and you love what you see. Always. Luca's arms tightened around her. I'll always see you, Lena. The survivor. The fighter. The brilliant woman who turned my world upside down and made it better. They stood together on the balcony as the sun finished setting, the city lighting up below them like a constellation of promises. Lena thought about the woman she'd been, small, afraid, convinced she deserved the pain. And she thought about the woman she'd become, strong, purposeful, capable of building empires and defending herself, and choosing love without fear. Thank you, she said finally, for catching me that night, for seeing past the broken parts to what was underneath. You were never broken. Luca's voice was firm. You were surviving. There's a difference. I know that now. Lena pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. You taught me that. You and Maria and Emma and everyone who showed me that asking for help wasn't weakness. That accepting love didn't mean giving up independence. That I could be both powerful and vulnerable, both soft and strong. And now? Luca asked, what do you want now? Lena looked out at the city stretched before them, at the life they'd built together from ashes and trauma and choices made in darkness and light. She thought about Walker Solutions, about the clients she was helping, about the woman she saw in the mirror who finally looked like herself. She thought about the nightmares that still came sometimes, but less frequently now. Thought about the mornings she woke in Luca's arms feeling safe instead of trapped. Now, she said, I want to build something that lasts. A business. A partnership. A life that's mine by choice, not by chance or fear or circumstance. She held up the key. I want to use this key to open every door in our future. Together. Luca's smile was brilliant, unguarded, full of love and pride and promise. Together, he agreed. He pulled her close again, and as the last light faded from the sky, Lena felt the final pieces of her old life fall away. Jason was gone, not just from Chicago but from her mind, relegated to the category of cautionary tales and lessons learned. The bruises had faded months ago. The fear had transformed into vigilance, then into confidence, then into the quiet certainty that she could handle whatever came next. Because she wasn't alone anymore. And more importantly, she was whole. The key in her hand caught the light from the city below, silver and bright and full of possibility. A key to his world. A key to their world. A key to a future she was choosing with eyes wide open and a heart that had learned to trust again. "I love you," she said, the words feeling right in a way they never had before. "Thank you for keeping your promise." Luca pulled back just enough to look at her, confusion and curiosity in his dark eyes. "Which promise?" "The first one you made. In the warehouse, when you told Jason you'd make him pay." She smiled, fierce and free. "You did. But more than that, you gave me back myself. You helped me become someone who didn't need saving anymore. Someone who could stand on her own and choose to stand beside you anyway." "That was always who you were," Luca said softly. "I just made sure you survived long enough to remember it." They kissed again as the city sparkled below them, two people who'd found each other in darkness and built something bright. A mafia boss and the woman he'd caught when she fell. A survivor and the man who'd shown her that protection and freedom could coexist. Partners. Equals. Choosing each other every single day. And in Lena's hand, the key to everything they'd built together gleamed like a promise kept, a future claimed, a love that had transformed them both into something neither could have been alone. She was no longer the woman who fainted in front of the mafia boss. She was the woman who stood beside him, who saved herself, who chose love without losing herself in the process. And that, she thought as Luca's arms tightened around her and the city lights blurred into stars, was everything she'd never known she could be.